With eyes full of warmth, he lets his gaze rest on a still charming lady. This is the first time the boy, as a private tutor, comes into contact with the mayor's wife from high society. Yet this boy of humble birth will later develop an ambiguous relationship with the mayor's wife, Louise. His name is Julian, and he was born into a carpenter's family. Although his status is extremely low, he carries a dream of changing his fate. He longs for two possible paths. One is to become an officer in a red military uniform, or else to become a priest admired by all. Julian is gifted and highly skilled in Latin. In just 1 month, he is able to recite the entire Bible. When the mayor hears that such a clever young man exists in town, he personally pays him a visit. He hopes to hire Julian as a tutor for his wife, so the boy gladly agrees, but he makes one demand. He values his dignity above everything else. When he first meets the mayor's wife, Madame Louise, Julian is dressed plainly, with elegance and melancholy showing on his face. By contrast, Madame Louise is dressed in luxury and carries a noble air, with no trace at all of a woman nearing 40. Seeing how young the boy is, she cannot help doubting Julian's ability in Latin. Madame Louise says, "Do you really know Latin dance?" This sentence makes Julian feel that his dignity has been insulted. But right then, the mayor suddenly pushes the door open and enters. As a noble member of the upper class, he warns Julian that from now on, he must not meet his parents or older brothers, because their status is too low. He even tells Julian to make clothing together with the servants in his free time. Julian feels that his dignity has been ruthlessly trampled, but in order to realize his dream of rising above his station, he chooses to endure it. Of course, his talent is unmatched. When he focuses on tutoring the mayor's son, his charming presence even makes the servant Elisa fall in love with him at first sight. Later, at a grand mayoral banquet, the young tutor is also invited to sit at the table. The mayor and his friends speak loftily, discussing the shifting winds of politics. Then Julian is suddenly asked for his view of the current state of society. Without fear, he says that our society certainly has nobles and commoners, but in some ways, the minds of commoners are even clearer than those of nobles. Next, someone tests him by asking how he evaluates Napoleon. In that culturally sensitive era, Napoleon is a forbidden topic. Julian knows this perfectly well, but can only say against his heart that Napoleon was an executioner. He ambitiously wanted to conquer Europe, yet caused tens of thousands of innocent soldiers to die on the battlefield. But in truth, Napoleon has always been his idol. He longs to become a hero like Napoleon, but at this very moment, he has to say the opposite of what he believes. Julian feels somewhat irritated and wants to walk into the yard for some fresh air. But just then, he unexpectedly runs into his two older brothers climbing over the wall. Seeing Julian dressed so elegantly, the two are furious and beat him without a word. Hearing the commotion, the mayor's wife hurries over in distress to help Julian up. Even the friend beside her finds it unbelievable to see Madame Louise caring so much about the boy. The lady has quite a fondness for this young man. Although he is a tutor, his treatment is poor, and he owns only 2 shirts. Ripples begin to stir in the woman's heart. She takes the initiative to give Julian some money so he can buy clothes. However, Julian rejects her kindness. His stubbornness and self-respect make the lady admire this young man even more. That night, while serving the lady, the servant Elisa openly expresses her love for Julian. Hearing these words, the lady also feels a sudden emptiness, because the last time she felt her heart move like this was already 20 years ago. Ever since marrying the mayor, her life has contained nothing but money and power. In her husband's eyes, she is only an accessory for noble occasions, and there has long been no real love between them. Just like that, Elisa's heart sinks deeper and deeper into Julian. She finally gathers the courage to confess to the boy, only to be coldly rejected. For her, this is a heavy blow. She feels deeply disappointed and even wants to ask the lady to help arrange the match. The lady smiles and agrees. However, Julian sneers at this proposal. He has his own ambitions and dreams. He longs to enter high society. So how could he marry a lowly maid? And Julian's refusal actually makes the lady feel a little secretly pleased. It is as if, looking at the young and handsome Julian, she has found the direction she once lost. Then one night during a conversation, Julian boldly grabs Madame Louise's hand while her cousin is not paying attention. This is an act that goes far beyond the boundaries of morality. If discovered, he would face the danger of being shot. But unexpectedly, the lady does not refuse him. With the lady's silent permission, Julian's desire and vanity swell day by day. He is no longer satisfied with simply pursuing a woman, but begins to see this relationship as a battle of fate. To conquer the high and mighty mayor's wife, Julian uses a ruthless push-and-pull tactic. he asks for 2 days off, specifically to make the lady hunger for him. At his friend's house, he keeps showing off his achievements and charm. In the young man's eyes, this pursuit is not only about personal feelings, but also a contest tied to destiny. At the same time, he wants to use this chance to take revenge on the powerful people who insulted his idol Napoleon. He believes Napoleon was not an executioner, but the true hero in his heart. As expected, the push-and-pull tactic works. As soon as Julian returns to the mayor's home, the lady is already waiting for him. Utterly distracted, her heart is filled with longing and desire for Julian, and she has been completely captured by him. Julian also knows very well that his plan has already succeeded halfway. He will keep pushing forward and launch an even stronger offensive. Finally, that night, Julian gathers his courage and sneaks into Madame Louise's room. However, the lady has already dressed herself beautifully and has been waiting for a long time. Julian timidly approaches her step by step. The will to conquer deep inside him makes him forget the fear that follows. And under Julian's attack, the lady's emotions collapse in an instant. So the two spend a beautiful night together. From then on, Madame Louise falls completely in love with this poor young man. To give Julian a better future, the lady decides to arrange for him to join the honor guard welcoming the king, and his 2 country brothers in the crowd happen to see their younger brother dressed in such military splendor. Jealousy and hatred naturally begin to grow in their hearts. They cannot accept that a carpenter's son could mingle among high officials and nobles. Even the respected priest questions the lady's decision. However, Madame Louise firmly believes that Julian has a unique temperament and character unlike anyone else. But unexpectedly, after that night, the lady's son suddenly falls ill. She feels deeply guilty, believing her unfaithfulness has angered God. To save her son's life, she even considers confessing everything to her husband and begging God for forgiveness. But at this critical moment, she must make a difficult choice. After several days of waiting, her son's condition finally begins to improve. Julian and the lady use this chance to continue their secret affair even more boldly. However, danger is quietly approaching. The mayor receives an anonymous letter. The letter accuses his tutor of having an affair with his wife. The mayor is furious and wants to have Julian killed immediately, but he also knows that if this scandal is exposed, it could affect his re-election, especially since his rivals would very likely use the matter against him. In fact, the person who wrote this anonymous letter is the servant Elisa. Because she cannot win Julian's love, jealousy grows in her heart, and she decides to destroy this relationship. Knowing that the matter is about to be exposed, the lady hurriedly finds Julian to discuss a plan. She suggests that Julian imitate the handwriting on the letter and write another anonymous letter. The content should warn the mayor that his wife is having an affair. This way, the mayor will suspect the letter accusing his wife was written by a political rival, shifting his attention away. At the same time, the mayor cannot tolerate Julian continuing to stay in the house. The lady comes up with an idea. Julian has always wanted to become a teacher, so she suggests that her husband give Julian a payment, allowing him to quietly leave the city and begin a new life. Once Julian leaves, the rumors will naturally calm down. After hearing the lady's suggestion, the mayor feels this is the perfect solution. It can preserve his reputation while also removing this hidden danger. He praises the lady's intelligence and wit without end. At the same time, Louise also sighs that if they keep hiding like this, it will be hard not to be discovered. Even though her heart is filled with reluctance, she still resolutely sends Julian away. So with the lady's help, Julian successfully enters the seminary to study. Although he is the son of a carpenter, the pride and intelligence in his bones quickly attract the priest's attention. The priest sees the young man's potential and decides to train him well. However, life in the seminary is nothing like Julian expected. He quickly discovers that this place is full of hypocrisy and flattery. Everyone speaks grand and proper words, yet does insincere things. This is completely different from what he once longed for, leaving him tired and disappointed. Just as Julian feels lost, a priest in Paris introduces him to a job. He becomes the secretary of the Marquis de la Mole. This is the greatest aristocratic family in Paris. For Julian, this is a brand new challenge. Although Julian stays in the Marquis's mansion, the huge difference in status soon makes him feel humiliated. At a noble banquet that evening, he is ignored and neglected by everyone, as if he is an invisible man who does not exist. Even the Marquis's daughter, Miss Mathilde, does not give him a proper look. This leaves Julian, whose pride is extremely strong, feeling deeply insulted. But what he does not know is that Miss Mathilde is actually interested in him. The suitors she has known before are all sons of noble families, but they are lazy, selfish, and cynical. Julian, however, is intelligent, passionate, and full of curiosity. When Julian is alone in the study, Miss Mathilde takes the initiative to approach and talk to him. They begin talking about Napoleon. This topic immediately sparks Julian's passion, because under Napoleon's rule, the status of ordinary people was completely different from what it is now. However, Miss Mathilde holds a different view. She believes it was Napoleon's rule that dragged people into the misery of the Great Revolution and pushed tens of thousands of soldiers to give their lives for him. Hearing this, Julian begins to realize he may be playing with fire. He knows very well the enormous gap between himself and this noble family. Mathilde continues to warn him that if her father hears these words, he will lose his life immediately. The next day, when Julian sees Mathilde talking with the Marquis, he nervously believes he is doomed. However, he unexpectedly discovers that the Marquis is furious because of something else. Mathilde has only told her father that one of his friends broke an appointment. This experience also makes Julian deeply realize that this noble young lady is not as simple as he imagined. A few days later, at a ball, the girl is radiant and charming, giving off an irresistible allure. She attracts the eyes of many young men, but Julian alone shows no interest in her. Mathilde senses his coldness, so she takes the initiative to speak to Julian, hoping to solve the mystery in her heart. Even so, Julian still responds lightly, showing no warmth at all. However, the other party's coldness does not make Mathilde retreat, but instead awakens her competitive spirit. So she decides to follow Julian the next day and see what is so special about him. It turns out Julian has gone out to visit the cemetery, specifically to pay tribute to Napoleon. The two smile at each other and begin talking. Mathilde tells him the love story of her ancestor La Mole and Queen Margot. Although their status was far too different, they truly loved each other. Even though La Mole was eventually executed, Mathilde still envies such love. Taking advantage of the moment when they are alone, the girl pretends to trip. Julian uses the chance to hold her hand. This is the hand of the daughter of the greatest noble family in Paris. For the boy, this is a huge victory. Mathilde is also shocked by Julian's boldness. Often, the most deep and unforgettable loves shine because of courage. However, Mathilde's personality is unpredictable. At times she is passionate, at times she is cold, leaving Julian troubled. When Julian ignores her, she comes to find him, but when Julian wants to be bolder, she turns and leaves. This push-and-pull attitude leaves Julian unable to read her. To deal with Mathilde's unpredictability, the boy can only use the push-and-pull tactic once again. When the Marquis's household decides to send someone to England on business, Julian chooses to follow without hesitation. Once he leaves, there is no news from him for days. Mathilde indeed falls for it. She immediately gives Julian a letter, inviting him to come to her bedroom late at night. After receiving the letter, Julian feels somewhat uneasy. He begins to suspect that this spoiled young noblewoman may be playing with him again. To ensure his own safety, he decides to carry a pistol with him. Mathilde keenly senses his tension and unease, although Julian stubbornly refuses to admit it on the surface. This time, he has truly won the girl's heart. He lies in bed, full of expectation, waiting for Mathilde to arrive. However, when she really appears before him, she suddenly becomes cold and heartless again. This sudden change leaves Julian completely caught off guard. Mathilde also sees through his thoughts, but she is not pursuing the final result, as if she has no interest in prey that is too easily obtained. Grief and anger surge through Julian's heart like a tide. He clearly realizes that in this emotional tug-of-war, he is lost to Mathilde. He raises the sword in his hand, but in the end, he only weakly smashes a vase to vent the anger in his heart. However, when night falls, Mathilde begins to reflect on her own behavior. She realizes she may have gone too far, and she is afraid she may truly lose Julian because of it. So she decides to go find Julian, hoping to make up for her mistake, but she does not know that Julian is hiding behind the door, silently watching her every move. When Mathilde thinks Julian has already left and no longer cares about her, the boy suddenly appears in front of her again. At this moment, Mathilde is truly moved by Julian's firmness and persistence. She knows she can no longer run from this relationship. To express her determination, Mathilde cuts off a lock of her hair, symbolizing that she will forever submit to Julian. But by the next day, she hides the cut hair away, and her attitude becomes cold once again. At the same time, the balance of power reverses again. Julian feels disappointed and helpless over the girl's constant changes. But at this moment, Julian hears from the Marquis that his daughter has already set a wedding date with a young nobleman. This means the time left for Julian is limited. When a noble friend hears about this, he gives Julian two pieces of advice. First, he must continue to stay calm and not reveal his emotions too easily. Second, he must conquer Mathilde by making her feel a sense of crisis. Julian accepts this advice and begins a new plan of pursuit. He deliberately sends letters outside frequently in front of Mathilde, creating the illusion that there is another woman outside. At the same time, he treats the widowed marshal's wife with great enthusiasm. Mathilde feels threatened. To win Julian back, she even agrees to the marriage arranged by her father. However, in this psychological battle, the one who finally cannot hold back is Mathilde. She angrily questions Julian, asking whether he is punishing her, but Julian continues to ignore it and keeps carrying out his plan. When the girl sees Julian with the marshal's wife at the opera house, Mathilde's anxiety reaches its peak. She worries that she may truly lose Julian. In the end, she rushes out of the theater, seeing that the moment has come. Julian immediately follows after her. In Mathilde's embrace and kiss, Julian wins. He knows she has always liked him, but her youthful rebelliousness had made her unwilling to admit it before. This time, he has not only won Mathilde's body, more importantly, he has won the heart of this noble young woman. Not long after, Mathilde discovers she is pregnant. To protect Julian from her father's punishment, she takes the initiative to write to her father and admits that she was the one who seduced Julian. To preserve the family's honor, they decide to leave together. After learning this, the Marquis is furious and believes Julian is not worthy of being his son-in-law. Mathilde firmly tells her father that if Julian dies, she will mourn him in widow's clothes and publicly declare Julian to be her husband. She firmly believes that Julian will rise to greatness in the future. However, the Marquis is unwilling to listen to his daughter's explanation. He has someone find Julian, gives him a sum of money, and demands that he leave Mathilde immediately. Julian refuses to accept this arrangement. He catches up with the Marquis's carriage and expresses his deep love for Mathilde and his firm belief in the future. But no matter what he says, the Marquis will never agree to let them be together. The Marquis feels that the young man before him is impossible to read. He even believes that Julian wants to climb into high society and is filled with unfathomable ambition. Meanwhile, blinded by love, Mathilde secretly makes a private vow of marriage with Julian in church. The Marquis finally makes a compromise. He gives Julian land and status, deciding to hold a grand wedding for his daughter next month. Julian also successfully becomes a cavalry lieutenant. He is filled with hope, dreaming of becoming a general like Napoleon before the age of 30. But at this critical moment, an anonymous letter is sent to the Marquis's home. The contents of the letter come from Madame Louise. In the letter, the lady clearly tells Mathilde that Julian is a selfish and greedy man. He uses various women to climb upward and has no religious discipline or faith. This letter is like a bolt from the blue, instantly destroying Julian's dream of reaching the top. He feels furious and unwilling to accept it, and returns to his hometown that very night. When he comes to the church, he sees Madame Louise listening attentively. Overcome by rage, Julian fires 2 shots at Madame Louise without a word. However, there is no anger or fear in Madame Louise's eyes, but instead a look of destiny. Soon, Julian is arrested and brought to justice. He is sentenced to death for murder, but Madame Louise does not die from it. She is only wounded in the shoulder. When Julian learns this news, his sorrow turns into joy. He is not happy because he has escaped the death penalty. He is happy because he realizes that Madame Louise truly is someone he once loved. He feels endless regret for his impulsive actions. At the same time, Madame Louise is also deeply remorseful. She never imagined that the letter would bring such a terrible disaster upon Julian, so she begs the judge to spare Julian and remove his death sentence. She explains that someone else asked her to write that letter, and the reason Julian shot her was that he was mentally depressed and suffering from an attack of illness. At the same time, Mathilde is also trying hard to save Julian. She spends a huge amount of money, pulling strings throughout the court, hoping to free Julian from a death sentence. Mathilde tells Julian that as long as he cooperates with the appeal in court, he may be able to regain his freedom. But at this critical moment, another revolution breaks out in France. Julian realizes that he cannot escape punishment through backdoor influence. Since he wants to become a hero like Napoleon, the priests and officials of Paris will never let him go. In their eyes, this young man born to a carpenter has a high level of awareness. If they do not execute him, then even more people will want to rebel in the future. The day of the trial finally arrives. Julian walks into the courtroom without hesitation. There is no fear on his face, and his heart is filled with anger and dissatisfaction towards society. He glares at the people judging him and loudly condemns them. "Among you who are judging me, there are no workers, no peasants, and no craftsmen who live by their hands." In other words, I can only be judged by people of a different class. What injustice and absurdity this is. His voice echoes through the courtroom, shaking every heart. He continues, I harmed the woman I loved most. A pure woman. I admit my crime, but before I go to my death, I want the world to see the injustice and corruption of society. Julian's words are fierce and full of power. His speech is like a sharp sword, aimed straight at the pain of society. Mathilde is frantic with worry. She cannot bear to see the man she loves walk toward death like this. She begs her father to use all his power to seek a pardon from the king, hoping to save Julian's life. However, fate plays its trick at this very moment. A massive revolution sweeps across all of Paris. The king abdicates, and the whole society falls into turmoil and chaos. In this storm, Julian is treated as a representative of revolutionaries and becomes a sacrifice made to warn others. Even though Mathilde and her father do everything they can, they still cannot change Julian's fate of execution. In the final moments of his life, Julian shares a deeply emotional farewell with Madame Louise. Perhaps only in this moment does Julian truly realize that the lady is the person he loves most in his heart. Immediately after, Julian walks firmly toward the guillotine. His eyes reveal stubborn devotion to his dream and an unwillingness to accept defeat. But toward the death that is about to come, he has no fear at all. There is a pure light shining in his eyes, as if telling the world that even though his life is about to end, his soul still keeps its original purity and sincerity. At this point, Julian's life is frozen forever at the age of 22. The red and the black is the representative work of Stendhal, the outstanding 19th-century French critical realist writer, and Julian, one of its central figures, spends his whole life struggling for fame and status. In truth, wealth is not important to him, because only fame, status, and reputation can allow him to live with dignity like an ordinary person. He never wants to be pitted, not in money, and not in spirit, but when he throws himself into Madame Louise's arms, he is as innocent and pure as a child clinging to a mother's warmth. In that moment, he is his truest self. Sadly, he is born in the era in which he least should have been born, an era that fiercely corrodes his stubborn soul. His ambition is not something he is born with, but he has no choice but to follow a materialistic society and live against his own heart beneath layers of hypocrisy. This is the inertia of an era, and also the sorrow of a generation. Julian uses love for the sake of reputation, but deep in his soul, love truly exists. If the mayor's wife, Madame Louise, opens the window of love for him and lets him feel the happiness of love, then the Marquis's daughter Mathilde is a messenger sent by heaven. She allows him, in his moments of loss, to possess both love and reputation at the same time. Before this, he believes he truly loves Mathilde, but only when he shoots the lady for revenge does he realize that he has always loved Madame Louise. Some people may say this is too absurd. If she is the woman he deeply loves, he would never allow her to suffer any harm. But looking back, why does he want to madly shoot Madame Louise after seeing her letter? In truth, it is because he cannot bear being insulted by others. Why can he not bear the insult? Because the person insulting him is the very woman he loves. When a man cannot receive the respect he deserves, and is even accused with serious slander, when he cannot receive understanding from his lover and instead must bear her curse, what kind of pain is that? And what kind of heartbreak? As if pierced by 10,000 arrows? For a man to lose both the most important love and the most important fame at the same time is the same as having his life taken from him while still alive. In truth, Mathilde is the truly pitiful and innocent girl. She believes she has found true love, and for the person she loves, she is willing to abandon everything, but she never expects that nothing is as she imagined. How can she bear such foolish self-mockery? She thought she had gained everything, but in the end, she had nothing. She has only been played by a malicious joke. Only at the very end does she realize that she was merely an outsider in this relationship, yet she is still willing to be fooled by him. Perhaps Julian being sent to the guillotine is the best ending. This is what he deserves for his crimes. Even so, it is still not enough to atone for a sincere love.